Carl Munson here with episode 7 of the Life Support Podcast with Dr. John Briffer. How are you today, John?
I'm very good. And how are you, Carl?
Excellent. I'm very well. Keen to talk to you today about acid versus alkali or alkaline. You see, I don't really know what I'm talking about already. A little of what you fancy does you good, they say, and we're going to look into, well, perhaps the science of that. And a bit of it's kind of in the air at the moment, isn't it? People pleasing, boundaries, that sort of thing. Where families get split asunder politically, the very opposite of being a people pleaser, and that which can be toxic, of course. Shall we start? I'm talking of toxicity, acid versus alkaline environments, or the bodily terrain, because we went into this Béchamp versus Pasteur, and I don't think you're a big fan of the idea that we should be alkalizing ourselves. Am I right?
Well, we could talk about what the supposed point of it is. Supposed, I mean.
I could go back in time with this when I used to drink really big bottles of water with green powder. You're grimacing already, John. Do you remember those days?
I do.
What was the company? Super Greens. It was all about the Super Greens, wasn't it? About 20 years ago, I think. And people were chugging down 2 liters of water. We've talked about that already before, which may or not.
Yeah, and maltodextrin, which is basically sugar, with the sprinkling.
Was that part of Super Greens?
Well, I don't know about Super Greens specifically, but a load of these products were basically maltodextrin, coloured green with some grass, essentially.
Wheatgrass, yes. Basically, it was like drinking pond water, duckweed, and all sorts of green things in there that were supposedly good for you. The theory was that we live acidic lifestyles, we have acidic thoughts, we have an acidic constitution, and you needed to alkalize. And it was a bit, as I recall, it was a bit like, negative thinking. You needed 10 positive thoughts to overpower a negative thought. And I think the same thing was thought of an acidic constitution. You needed to pile in with the alkaline stuff to put that right. Any truth in that, do you think?
Well, let me just tell you where I think a lot of it came from. The sound of your body being over acidic, by the way, I mean, just from a branding perspective, doesn't sound good, does it? I think.
No.
But some of the ideas behind it were, first of all, with a very acidic system, it's a bit like putting chalk in some hydrochloric acid. It's not going to be good for the bones. And then there was also another thought around an acid environment being conducive to, developing and having cancer, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a chronic disease magnet.
Yeah. So the thought was, well, if you eat an alkalizing diet, I'll describe that in a moment, then you're going to be generally healthier and live longer. So what is an alkalizing diet? Well, it's not necessarily alkaline foods. It's foods that end up alkalizing the body, which are basically fruits and vegetables. Plant matter is the idea. Whereas things like protein and fat are supposedly acid forming in the body. Yeah. And so you want to eat as little of those as possible. And dairy, by the way, acid forming.
Yeah.
And as much as possible of the fruits and vegetables. So you end up basically, and I will return to this in a moment, on a kind of vegetarian stroke vegan diet.
Yes.
We'll get into that in a moment. Okay. So the first thing is, I don't want to get all doctory about this, but the acid alkali balance in the body is actually quite tightly controlled. If I remember rightly, and this is from about 40 years ago, I think it's between 7 is neutral pH, but the body is normally between 7.35 and 7.45. I remember. Don't quote me on this because I might from memory. But it's very tightly controlled. Okay, and it's controlled through respiration and kidney function and all sorts of things. Don't quiz me on the details because I didn't learn it the first time at medical school. Okay, so I'm unlikely to remember it because I never learned it. But basically, it's tightly controlled. Do you see?
Yeah, we get the idea.
You could argue, therefore, if you eat a completely carnivorous diet, your body should be able to manage that acidity, excrete it, and keep yourself in a relatively narrow band in terms of acidity, alkalinity. And it does appear that the body can do that. Also, I don't think there has been any evidence. That doesn't mean it doesn't stand up. It might be that something hasn't been properly studied and we don't know, but I don't think there is any evidence for this idea that acidity in the body is cancer promoting, particularly. Even if we were able to dramatically change the alkaline acid balance in the body. Does that make sense?
It
So,
does.
so none of it really stands up, but I actually have a criticism of it, which is twofold, basically. Number one, I actually don't think plant-based diets are particularly good for promoting robust well-being and health. And the reason for that is that I've seen enough people do them to see in reality what can happen to people when they take that course. Not in the first few weeks or even months sometimes, Carl, but eventually these people, in my experience, and I don't want to offend anyone, suffer with it. They suffer with gut problems because of all of the fiber, I think. And they also just suffer with their mood and energy. They just sort of run out of steam. They start to look pale very often. They just don't look right. They end up looking a bit like Brian Johnson, who eats a vegan diet. He's the guy that's spending $2 million a year on living to be 150 or whatever his kind of deal is. He doesn't look well.
Did we say it's not going well?
He doesn't look well. Have you seen him? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't. I know the sort of character you're speaking of. I don't know this person specifically, but it sounds to me, how I've put this in the past in my layman way, is it's the triumph of psychology over physiology, and it's or ideology over physiology.
No, I was about to correct you, and you corrected yourself.
Yes,
It's
yes.
ideology over biology, I think.
Yes, and people can get a lot out of that, can't they? We can really
Yeah.
get a lot, as we see in the world at the moment. You can get a lot of drive out of ideology and energy, but how it translates physiologically, how the truth of how you look and perform is irrefutable, really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, again, it's a bit anecdotal. I think we mentioned this on a previous pod, but my experience with it, because I've seen a lot of people over the years, is it is quite consistent. And by the way, there's a statistic, I don't know if it's completely accurate, that about 80% of people that go vegetarian, vegan, go back at some point to a more omnivorous diet. And I'll just tell you a little anecdote about this. I was at a book launch, not one of my own, and I was talking with a lady who was a healer, like a hands-on healer.
Yeah.
Psychic healer. I can't remember exactly what she did. Nice lady. We're having a chat. Somehow there was a conversation going on about Egypt, and then we ended up on a subject around meat, whatever, because she found out what I did and asked me what my views. Yeah, I didn't. It's all coming back to me now. I haven't thought about this for ages. Right. Anyway, she's
Graham
a nice
Hancock.
lady.
Graham Hancock was in there somewhere.
Yes, probably. Well, I'm not sure he wasn't there. I'm not.
Was he
I'm not sure he wasn't there. And I said to him, "Well, come on then, now with the pyramids built, something like that."
Yeah, like, of course.
Yeah. Come on.
He loves that question.
Yeah. Oh. Anyway, I'm not sure it wasn't him. I'm going to have to look this up.
TED Talk.
But anyway, that's it. The book that was being launched was about Egypt. That's why.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yes,
fair enough.
Right. Anyway, so we're chatting, and she said, what are your views broadly on diet? And I sort of explained that, my general principle would be eat a diet based on the foods we've been eating the longest. And if you like to eat it and you don't have any ethical, moral objection to it, that would include meat, right? And she goes, I'll tell you an anecdote. Anyway, she's a long-term vegan, okay? And then got progressively weaker with this. And then one day she collapsed unconscious in the street. She's telling me this story, right? I'm not making this up. So she collapsed in the street.
Face, John. You've got that kind of face.
Right. So she's collapsed in the street, and she said, and I don't know how long I was out for, but when I came round, the first thing I said was, "Get me a kebab." It's not a joke.
No, I know. I'm sorry, but it's like a Saturday night from the 80s, isn't it?
That's true.
Right.
So anyway, so we have that. A plant-based diet, I'm not sure is, really the best way. Now you'll hear people saying, but hang on, what about the blue zones? Are you familiar with those?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The blue zones is the idea. There's 5 places around the world where they have a very high percentage of centenarians. I'm going to have to do this from memory now because I know we're going to talk about this explicitly. Yes. But anyway, it's Okinawa.
Bless you.
It's not a womble. Anyway, Okinawa in Japan. It's an island off Japan. Sardinia,
Yep.
Ikaria, which is in Greece.
Yep. Isle of Wight.
Loma Linda, which is California, and one other place. That's it. It's in Costa Rica, the
Okay.
Nicoya.
Yeah.
I think it's the Nicoya Peninsula. I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, these aren't the only blue zones, but these are the popularized ones, presumably.
yes, these are the polarized ones. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that while they say these are plant-based diets, they're not. There's only one where it's plant-based, which is Loma Linda, where they have a lot of Seventh-day Adventists, where it's part of the religious law not to eat meat, as well as don't drink and don't smoke. So we've got that. But the other places, they eat quite a lot of meat in reality. But also, forget centenarians, I would say. I'm not really interested in the centenarians. I'm interested in what's the average age of death? Because that gives you a much better, broader idea, doesn't it? Of, okay, what's the impact of these lifestyle factors, maybe? Or at least what's the association? Because it's not causal necessarily, but what's the association? Well, I mean, for example, in men, longest lived men in the world are where? Do you know?
Oh, I always thought it was the Hunzers, but that's again possibly
No.
an urban health myth, isn't it? Go on,
Yes.
go on.
Well, you're full of those, Carl.
I really am. I really am.
It's probably not an established fact in your head. No, it's not. It's not
That's
the
a fact.
Hundreds.
That is a fact.
That's a fact. It's not. It's not the Hundreds. It's the Japanese.
I was going to say that actually. Yeah.
Right.
So yes, that makes
Out
sense.
of about 200 countries, they live longer than anywhere else. Right now, think of another table here. Okay.
Yeah.
Meat consumption by men. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Who's at the top of that table as well?
Is it Japanese as well?
Yes. They
we have to talk about quality as well, though, don't we? Because the
quality of the meat.
Yes.
We'll do that another day. But the point is that the longest lived men on the planet eat the most meat. Yep. Now, I'm not saying that means meat is life extending.
Yeah.
Because this is an association. Okay. Yeah. But if you look at this evidence and the fact that there are other evidence where they've looked across the globe and found basically the more meat that's eaten, the longer people live. Again, it may not be the meat. It might be, for example, that people that eat more meat have better socioeconomic circumstances, which they probably have, by the way, and maybe it's that. But
that's why vegetarians, I think, had the association of good health with them, because they were likely to be more health conscious or aware, weren't they?
It's funny that you should mention that, because there are 3 studies, to my knowledge, where they have tried to control for this factor that you're talking about. The vegetarians are a bit more health conscious, and it may not therefore be the vegetarianism per se. It's these other factors. They smoke less, they exercise more, maybe they meditate or whatever it is. Okay,
they care, don't they? Yes. They're conscious. Yeah.
If I remember rightly, and again, this is from memory from a long time ago, but one of the studies, for example, they recruited both vegetarians and non-vegetarians to look at from health food stores, with the idea that people that go to health food stores, people like you, Carl, are basically similarly health conscious. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah,
and they found there was no difference in this case in mortality.
Okay.
In another one, I think they got vegetarians to recruit their non-vegetarian friends, and the idea that sort of culturally these people are similar. Again, no difference. I think in another one, they tried to control for the other factors. So you basically try and factor these healthy habits of vegetarians into the equation. And again, when they did that, sort of no difference, basically. So first of all, getting back to the acid alkali thing, I'll just tell you, first of all, the body, remember, controls its acid alkali balance quite tightly. Doesn't really matter what you eat, it's going to keep it within a relatively narrow range. But also, when I just think about people's health and their well-being, I can absolutely tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, overall, there will be exceptions. If you take someone who's quite omnivorous, and by that I mean they eat meat and fish and eggs and a bit of dairy and fruit and vegetables, the sort of diet that I would broadly advocate, and you compare these people eating that diet with ones eating a diet that's essentially plant-based, and therefore alkalizing, this former group have much better health and well-being overall, in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, mine too, on a very anecdotal sort of social level, and the plant-based heroes that are held up have other factors, don't they? Like either they may be top performing athletes and so on. It's really interesting, I'm aware that there's nothing like a great kind of theory, story, marketing hype to go with a network marketing product than that. I mean, that just made complete sense to me at the time that we were kind of acidifying ourselves, and what a terrible environment that was to put
Mm.
ourselves and our bodies in. So yeah, good. I'm glad we talked about that. Is there anything else you want to say on that, particularly on acid
No, I
versus?
think
I
I've
mean, it's not really
ranted and
about that,
shouted
is it?
enough. What?
Yeah, it's just not really about that. It's about other things other than that, and that's just like a cherry-picked view that might be used to sell things, as it turns out, which is not unusual, we have to say.
Mm.
Right, a little of what you fancy does you good
Mm.
then. This is this I have to say I appease some of my urges in this way. Oh, a little bit of what you fancy does you good, I'm having the
Yeah.
occasional Mars bar or something, point of sale. What do you make of
Well,
that?
first of all, does that extend to heroin?
Um, is that a personal question or just more of a general inquiry?
Anyway, let me just say what I think about it. I'll tell you where this came from, okay? Because
Yeah.
I was on X. Shouldn't do that, but I was
Oh,
on X, okay?
thank you. Mm.
And there was this lady, and she had a jar in front of her, and she had, I think, salted caramel flapjacks or something like that in it, okay? And
Slippery
she
slope. Yes.
she was, well, isn't it? She was saying, let me tell you why it's okay to have a salted caramel flapjack bite-sized type thing. The reason that people can't do that is they haven't trained themselves to be able to eat it in moderation.
Yeah.
Okay. So what she's saying basically is that if you eat a salted caramel flapjack and the rest of them are in a jar in the cupboard, for example, you should train yourself to not have any more than that. So you have one or two of these things, a relatively small amount, smallish portion, and then
Yeah.
leave it. Well, I can just tell you from my experience with real human beings, not this human being, she may be different. Some people find that incredibly difficult because some foods are very, what you might call moreish, and they're very rewarding. Okay. They light up reward centers in the brain, and then the brain is going, you need more of that. Does
Yes.
that make sense? So I'll give you an example of this. Like if I eat a dark chocolate biscuit, doesn't matter whether I'm hungry or not, there is almost zero chance that I'm going to be able to stop at one.
Leave it at that. Yes.
It's going
Jaffa
to be
cakes for
more.
me. Yeah.
It's going to be more like 8.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now she says what you should do is sit with it and just be disappointed that you can't have any more.
Mm.
Okay. But that's almost a bit like saying to someone who's alcoholic, just have one beer or a glass of wine and
Yeah.
just sit there disappointed
Put the
that you
rest in the
can't have
back of
any
the
more.
cupboard. Yeah.
Because what she's saying is if you give in, you'll just be disappointed later when you go, in my case, I'm 59 and I should be better than this. Why have I just eaten half a pack of
You go into a spiral of
You know what I mean?
self-hatred.
No photos, please, given the work that I do. Do you see?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But my attitude would be this. Okay, I can see what she's trying to say, but I would say for the vast majority of people that don't naturally find it easy to control eating a very moreish food, right?
Yeah.
That the best thing to do, for the most part, Carl, is not to have it in the first place.
Don't have it in the house. That's what I have to do. I know if it's in if I bulk buy anything like that, it's and my intention in the supermarket is to pace myself. There's a bulk buy, and you're thinking, well, okay, I'll take advantage of that, and I'll have one packet of these biscuits a week. Week one, they're all gone, aren't they? That's just how it works. And the other thing I want to add to that and get your opinion on is that I'm thinking, but it's one thing to eat those things that aren't good for you, but then to pile in on yourself and beat yourself up is a
That's it.
massive disaster, isn't it?
That
If
is
you
it.
compound that as well, I think
The self-judgment, the self-loathing,
yep, not good for us.
particularly, for example, like I don't want to make this about me, but for someone like me, right, given the work that I do,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
if I've eaten half a packet of biscuits, and it can happen, by the way,
Yeah, of
which is
course it
why I'm
can.
suggesting that for most people, just keep away from them.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't leave them in a cupboard that's got a glass front. You know, if they, the best advice is not to have them in your home, but obviously both of us have family, right? So
Yep.
we can't be like food Nazis banning everything from. Do you know what I mean?
For
You know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah, that's not a good look, is it? Yes, you
No,
can have a
no.
carob. You can have a carob biscuit. It's like that's the way to make way to make your kids hate you, isn't it? Is making them
Yeah.
eat carob instead
In
of the shop.
Portugal, definitely.
Although, yeah, Portugal's a big producer of carob. It has to be said. It's a good place
Of
to
course it is.
get
Of
this.
course it is. It's got that
Yes,
slightly aniseedy, I find. It's got a
it's
slightly
not a bad thing in its own right, but when you try and pretend it's chocolate, that's where the trouble
Ah,
starts, as far as I'm concerned.
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
And you have
yeah.
probably been, when you lived in the West Country, in enough health food stores that sell this sort of stuff, where you go,
Oh,
no, it's not
yes.
dairy milk of old.
Yes, it's not. It really isn't, and no kids falling
Yeah.
for that, are they? And you know, you know that to me is one of the worst things. You know, like a child opening their lunchbox to get out a little Ziploc bag of carob drops or whatever. Whilst,
Oh,
but, you know, in the same way, better
the
not do
stigma
that.
of it.
Yes, yes, indeed. And what it's not the 70s anymore, is it? When you had the treat tin or whatever at grandma's house. Now, how did people discipline themselves in those days? Because I would go to some, grandma's house or the equivalent thereof, and
Yeah,
it would appear the same biscuits were in there from the week before, and a Snickers called a marathon in those days, of course.
yeah. Mhm.
Those old ladies must have had incredible self-control in the
Yeah.
way that we clearly don't, John.
But they lived through the war.
Yeah, they could discipline themselves, couldn't they, in a way that we have no chance of doing. So best
I think
not
that's
have it in
right.
the house, I think.
Mm.
And a little of what you fancy. I mean, there
I
is
guess it
still some
works.
truth in that, isn't there?
Well,
I
look,
treats are
look.
good. Treats are
No,
good. But if
treats are
they are
good.
treats,
But
it needs to be a treat.
if it's, I'll tell you another thing I have a problem with, by the way. So I feel like this is like a confessional. This is taking me back to my childhood.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Um,
I'm listening. I'm listening.
licorice.
Yes.
So I've got a friend here in Portugal called Omar. So Omar is Moroccan ethnicity, if you like. His parents were Moroccan, um, but he grew up in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, I don't know if you know, they eat a lot of licorice,
They do,
and
don't
I
they?
absolutely love it. I
Yes.
really like licorice. I call it Dutch crack. In fact, we call it Dutch crack.
That's something else to me, but go ahead.
There's a there's a shop on the way to the airport in a place called Bulakem, which is a
Oh, yeah.
Dutch supermarket, and they've got like a massive rack, like like a feature wall of different sorts of licorice. We call it the Dutch crack house. I cannot go in there. I was driving past it with Lily at the weekend. Where have we
Inextricably
been?
drawn
I
to the
can't remember.
Dutch
And I
supermarket.
said, we are not stopping there. We're not stopping there. We're not going to stop there. And I didn't,
Next
because
thing
I
you know,
knew what was going to happen if I did. Okay.
yeah,
If you're like that, if you've got a problem, then a little bit of what you fancy is just going to make your life infinitely harder. Okay. Now, if
yes,
it's something that you can easily self-regulate, then I go with the lady's advice. I don't want life to
yeah,
be miserable for everyone. You don't have to live like a Trappist monk.
yeah.
Like, for example, with me, there are some people, they drink alcohol and then they get on a roll, and that next thing, 3 bottles have gone, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
I
talking about
do,
beer,
I
I'm talking
do.
about wine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got friends like this, okay?
Yeah, me too.
Now,
I'm
I'm not
married to
judging
someone
it.
like that.
I'm
No,
not
I'm not
judging it,
kidding.
by
She
the
won't
way,
mind me saying that. It's
but
true.
I'm
She
not
doesn't
like
drink.
that,
Yeah,
okay? So if someone said to me, "We'll just have a glass," well, yeah, fine,
yeah.
fine,
Same here. Yeah, yeah.
totally fine.
Yes,
Whatever. But don't put a plate of chocolate biscuits in front of me.
or licorice for that matter. They're not
Or
called the
licorice,
Low
yeah.
Countries for no reason, John. Tempting you like that. Okay. Do not send licorice in to John. People pleasing. This
Oh,
is finally today. This is within this realm of. There seems to be so much more popular psychology around. I guess it's social
yeah,
media that turbocharges it, doesn't it? And you'll see,
yeah,
ways to live your life, meme. Stop being a people pleaser, for example.
yeah.
Obviously, it can be a lot more complex than that, but basically, good advice. It's pretty self-harming, isn't it, to be a incorrigible people pleaser? What are your views on that?
I totally agree with that. And I
Mm.
think it gets people in a lot of trouble. I think I have an idea for most people where it comes from,
Yes.
which is this idea that you're self-worth or your value or what gets you off is related to other people's response to you, not what you think about you, what other people think about you.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So therefore, in that situation, well, we can't let the side down. We can't not be the perfect friend or husband, wife, or whatever. We can't be anything other than the perfect colleague. So we have to say yes to everything, whether we want to do it or not.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bit of a performance art, I think, for a lot of people. Now, coincidentally, I was talking to Lily about this as we we're waiting for the school bus today. And there was a couple of anecdotes, for example. So I was in London recently and I managed to meet up with the ex-wife of a cousin of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a health thing going on, and I've always liked her, and we met up. And I sent her a message that basically went, I hear you're in London. I haven't seen her for years, by the way. I hear you're in London. I'll be in London next week. If you want to meet up, that's fine. I said, but I also said, no one's asked me to do this. I'm under no pressure whatsoever. So feel free if you want to completely ignore this message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason that I was doing it hasn't got to do with anyone else other than her, really. I'm extending, a bit of friendship and I suppose kindness to her. But I'm not performing for anyone. No one knows I'm doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to people please. I'm not waiting for some positive response from other people. Go, isn't he a good boy? You do a nice thing.
I am thinking that now. You've shared the other. Yes. Yeah.
So I've explained to Lily that there's research that shows that if a child is generous and they're continually praised by their parents for being generous, they become less generous. Now, why would that be, Carl? Think about it, and then if you don't get it, I'll tell you.
No, I do get it. It becomes performative and reward related, doesn't it, rather than an intrinsic and natural way of behaving?
That's exactly right.
Boom.
It's
Yeah.
that. Boom.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I was saying to Lily is, and this is what I believe, do things that you want to do if you feel they're the right thing, and detach entirely from the response you get, even to the person who you're supposedly doing the nice thing to.
Yeah.
Detach from it. Just focus on the process. What is it you want to do? What do you feel is right? Do that and leave it at that. You've done your job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because this idea that we're now doing things because of the response, as you said, because it's performative in some way, is just a way to tie yourself up in knots and be constantly preoccupied with the other people are thinking, which you can't control, and gets people in a lot of trouble.
Okay. Well, it does. And that's what I want to ask you. It's one thing for a 10-year-old, isn't it, embarking on their life to be given that pearl of wisdom. Yeah. Something else for a 50 or 60 or 70-year-old who's been practicing this all their life. And they see this meme on social media. Stop being such a people pleaser. They get this the mechanics of it. They see how they're hurting themselves by doing it. And the kind of, it's kind of it's really unhelpful for the meme to end by saying set firmer boundaries, because after a life of that sort of behavior, how do you go about
you're quite right. By the way, you bring up a really important point, because very often these patterns are set, as you're alluding to, very early on in life, and they become quite deep and I would say unconscious. There are certain problems that we have. Well, first of all, at least bring it to your consciousness. Because a lot of people don't necessarily realize, and I don't mean this judgmentally and it's not dismissive of them, they don't really realize they're doing it. They've done it for so long. That's just how life is. It's a pattern of behavior, do you see? So if this resonates with anyone, you might at least just say, oh, actually, I've got a tendency to do that. Do you know what I mean? I was saying to Lily this morning, I'm one of the most boundaried persons you could imagine, because I know this sounds... No, well, you've known me long enough. I don't care.
I've known you long enough to agree. Yes.
I don't care what people think. I care what I think. I do what's right. And if I think, someone might be trying to take advantage of me or something like that, it's just a no. I'll tell you this story. A friend of mine, this is a year or so ago now, he was asked by friends of his to look at a car for them, a second-hand car, and assess it, because he's good at that sort of thing. They didn't even go with him. They just sent him, go and look at this car and tell us what you think about it, right? They didn't even take the time or trouble to go with him. And there's a bit of me that thinks, well, no one would even try that with me. They just wouldn't even...
You're the other end of that spectrum, aren't you, of being mugged in that way? I think you make a great point.
So anyway, the point is that you saying, well, what do you do when you're 50 years old now and you've been doing it
Yeah.
for the whole of your life? Well,
Yes.
again, as I said, these things are often quite unconscious, okay? And very often just bringing awareness or having a bit of therapy won't really work for people. And that's because it's a bit like you saying, go and have therapy for your spider phobia. It's
Mm.
completely irrational and I'm aware of it, but I don't necessarily have the skills to deal with it.
Yeah.
So usually if someone's going to really expunge these sort of issues and rewrite the code, they have to address it usually through a therapy that gets in a bit deeper into the psyche and rewrites that code.
Yeah,
So things like
absolutely.
hypnotherapy, there's something called EFT,
Yep.
emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping.
Mm.
EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, for example. There's
Yep.
another therapy that tend to get in a bit deeper, Carl. And
Yes.
actually, I think for people hold a lot more promise in terms of righting the wrong, if you like, rewriting the script and letting people transcend the issue properly, basically.
Yes, and the Landmark Forum and other such courses, which we might talk about. Do you remember that time when I phoned you up in the middle of the night?
To
Tell you I
tell you
love you,
you love me.
and
Did
I
he
was
tell you?
sorry.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't
We've
think you were
all
on
we've
my
all
list.
done it, eh? No, did you actually do that? Because I wouldn't be surprised.
Of course I did. Yes, of
No,
course
did
I
you
did.
do it? Are you joking?
No, I've done the Landmark Forum on 2 occasions, and
Okay.
a little bit. And I'd love to talk about it at some other point. We've done our 3
Well, I
topics
haven't
today.
done Landmark. I did something
You really
much
need
less.
to.
You're sounding like a Scientologist now.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to ring you up at 2 tomorrow morning and tell you that. That's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, we should. Yeah. Well, you can talk about your experiences
Can
at
I add
Landmark.
as well on this
Mm.
people pleasing thing? You make a great point about it, bringing it to consciousness. That's a lot of the work, isn't it? To see what you're doing to yourself is massively powerful, and the effect, the cost it's having on your life. And you'll
Oh,
find out who your friends are, won't you? If you can have that conversation with friends and say, "Look, I think a lot of what we're doing here is people pleasing," and can I experiment with this with you? Can you tell me when I'm doing it? Can I say to you, look, I say I want to go out for a drink. I actually don't. Is that okay? And your
yeah,
good friends are going to say, bang on. I don't want to go out either. Just be honest with me.
yeah.
And those will be your persistent and good friends, won't they? And the others who respond badly to that, who take advantage of you because you're a people pleaser, you'll probably drop off their list.
I mean, you bring a really, really good point up here. I think. In fact, I was talking to someone recently, and it's not a particularly happy story, but basically, a few years ago, he lost his wife. Okay, so he's mid-50s. A few years ago, he lost his wife, and then sort of went out on the sort of dating scene
Mm-hmm.
and actually met someone and showed me a photograph of her. And she looks not just, how she presents physically, just the energy. I know it's just a photograph. I was thinking, okay, that's a runner. Do you know what I mean? I just thought, yes, you should probably be together. You two. Do you know what I mean? There's something about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, that's my response. But he said most of his friends have just said, "Oh, it's too early. What are you doing?" Blah, 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 blah. And I just said, "They're not your friends.
Yes,
They're
yes.
not your friends." I said, "Did
Yep.
anyone support you and say, 'Good on you, mate, and I'm very happy for you, and I hope it all works out'?" He said, "Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a handful of people." I said, "Yeah, they're your friends.
Yep.
Those are
Yep.
your friends. They're the
Pick
ones that
them.
are actually happy for you, that aren't judging." I
Yeah.
mean, he's just
I
found
want to be
someone.
his friend as well now.
He's lovely, by the way.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm a people pleaser. Anyway, John, thank you very much. Very interesting. Acid, alkaline, a little of what you fancy does you good, and people pleasing. We've talked about there. Any other subjects that you'd like us to have a chat about? Please mention them in the comments below, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, John.
Thank you.